What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and today we got another brand new Overwatch 2 Director's Take vlog, this time outlining upcoming hero balance changes for Season 8. These include buffs for tank heroes, some changes to hero swapping and the amount of ultimate charge you retain, along with a few notes regarding the state of levers, and some of the ideas Blizzard has about that issue going forward. So diving right on in, first and foremost, let's take a look at the ultimate charge changes. We're making a general change to the amount of ult charge retained when swapping heroes, reducing it from 25% to 15%. We do like that this mechanic removes friction when swapping heroes, and think that it still should at 15%. However, there is a perception that it's almost always an advantage to counter swap upon dying, and we're lowering the value to see if it has any effect on swap rates. Now, it's not really outright stated here, but I feel like more than anything, this is targeting tank heroes specifically, and the whole rock, paper, scissors tank dynamic that the role has basically been suffering from, well, basically since the launch of Overwatch 2 and the shift to 5v5. Unfortunately, I'm not inclined to think that tweaking the amount of ultimate retention from swapping heroes is really the right approach to this. It's maybe the quickest and simplest way to try and address the issue, but honestly, I think it's going to take a lot more hero rebalancing in order to truly solve it. I don't know, that's just my thoughts on it as someone who plays quite a bit of tank heroes. I can't help but feel like this 10% reduction in ultimate retention won't really change the fact that a lot of tank heroes just outright hard counter other tank heroes, but I guess we'll see. Moving on to some of these specific hero changes though, particularly focusing on tanks, we released a reworked Roadhog late in Season 7. Roadhog quickly became one of our top performing tanks with a win rate somewhere around 54%. There's been a lot of feedback around his kit, but we're going to hold off on making any changes at the start of Season 8. Mauga has a lot of answers to Roadhog, and we'd like to see where the meta settles a bit before aiming at the mid-season patch for any balance adjustments. I gotta say, that's quite interesting that Roadhog has been that successful following his rework. Personally, I think they over-buffed his Take a Breather ability when they did those sort of like retroactive additional buffs after the rework was introduced. I really don't think the extent to which they buffed his healing was necessary. That's just my thoughts on it, but I am excited to see those Roadhog Mauga interactions and matchups coming in Season 8. Additionally, Doomfist will be getting some ultimate changes. There are times when Doomfist players use his ultimate purely as an escape. It's a little disappointing to activate Meteor Strike and intentionally land on a health pack rather than enemy players. Starting in Season 8, Doomfist will now regenerate 75 health per second while in the air. We're slightly increasing the cost of the ult in order to compensate for the buff. I strongly agree with this sentiment. The idea of using Meteor Strike simply to escape and save yourself is a really lame way to use an ultimate. So I am glad to see that they're addressing this starting in Season 8. Next up, tanks are supposed to take and create space, and when Ramattra is in his base form, he can be a little too easy to ignore. So we're going to shift 100 of his health to armor, as well as slightly increase the size and damage of his projectiles to see if it helps. Cool, I'm all for this change. Ramattra has definitely been suffering lately, and I think this is probably a decent little direction to push him in and see where it goes. Next up, Winston isn't the best matchup for other tanks. This is part of his kit, but the disadvantage feels too extreme, and we'd like to alleviate it a bit. In Season 8, Winston's Tesla cannon will now ignore armor's damage reduction. Ooh, that's a really exciting change for Winston. Once again, Winston is a tank hero who I really think has been suffering for kind of a while at this point, so I'm excited to see how this ends up tweaking his kit. Negating armor's damage reduction effect, I'm curious to see how that plays out for him. I'm not really inclined to say it's going to make a huge difference in terms of his viability, but a nice little buff, I like it. Moving on to a few of the changes to our DPS heroes, let's start with Sombra. She's had a lot of moving parts recently, and we feel like she's in a much better spot. Her win rate hovers between 45 and 48% depending upon rank. However, her ultimate still isn't as satisfying as it could be. So we're going to raise the ability lockout time of her EMP by 1.5 to 3 seconds and reduce the amount of damage it does from 30% to 25% of max health. This brings her ultimate more in line with her hero fantasy and is much sharper in its effect, basically shifting the EMP to be more hack focused as opposed to damaging focused. Interesting direction, we'll see how that feels. Soldier 76 has enjoyed a lot of success in Season 8. He's a really well-rounded DPS, and the self-sustain from his heal can make him really difficult to deal with while he's in its radius. Rather than reducing reducing the effectiveness of the heal, we'd rather open up larger windows of opportunity by increasing the cooldown from 15 to 18 seconds. Alright, so little soldier nerf to his own healing. Does anyone remember how much damage Tracer's pulse pistols do? I wouldn't blame you if you don't, we've changed them a lot. If you guessed 5.5 damage per shot, you'd be right, but not for long because we're changing them again back to 6. The previous change to 5.5 was made to offset a bug with their fall off and spread. Now that those bugs are fixed, we're moving them back to their previous value. Alright, cool. Seems pretty fair. I don't see a lot of Tracers lately, so I don't really mind her getting a buff. Let's take a look at some of our support changes. Brigitte was the best performing support hero since the last patch, and we are seeing your feedback that she is becoming a must pick. We're going to revert the damage on Whip Shot to try and bring her back in line. We're also looking at the damage potential of Baptiste, and we'll be lowering his primary fire ammo from 45 to 36. So, nerfs for Brig and Baptiste. And lastly for this director's take, Aaron Keller goes on to talk a bit about levers. I'd like to touch on one of the items mentioned in the last director's take, specifically the leave rate in quick play matches. Based on a recently implemented set of penalties for leaving too many matches, that rate has gone down considerably. There has been a bit of talk around that, specifically that some people view that mode as something that they would like the freedom to leave without worrying about those penalties. Different people play quick play for different reasons. Some people see it as their try-hard version of the game, some view it as a way to experiment with heroes, and others use it as their casual, just-for-fun version of the game. It's really difficult to have this part of the game be all things for all people. In the past, we've talked internally about whether we need a third main queue in the game in order to have different areas to serve people on different levels of seriousness. But don't think that players would voluntarily move into the appropriate queue for their particular playstyle. In regard to penalties for leaving quick play matches, the reasoning behind this is that frequent leavers do have an effect on the other people in the match, degrading its quality. There are some players that literally leave over 90% of their matches, and we could no longer stick to a black and white policy because of this. The policy is still very lenient, probably too lenient, where players need to leave almost a quarter of their most recent matches to trigger a light penalty. We'll continue to look at this and tweak these policies in an attempt to promote better match quality, but without the harsher restrictions of ranked play. I gotta say, I am really glad to hear this last part because as someone who plays quick play basically as my version of competitive, I don't take it super hardcore seriously, but I definitely want to have fun, balanced matches in it. Levers are the absolute bane of that quick play experience. They ruin the match, they just completely devastate it for everybody else. So good, make the levers leave once and for all. And I definitely agree with Aaron here that the idea of adding a third main queue mode beyond quick play and ranked probably isn't really the best thing to do. I think that would just sort of devastate matchmaking because it'd be splitting people up into even more separate parties of queuing into matches. So yeah, good news we're hearing here if you ask me. And that does it for today's Overwatch 2 Director's Take. Thank you all so much for watching. Definitely let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments down below. Are you excited about any of these upcoming balance changes for the various heroes? Or maybe you're eager like me to see levers punished even more harshly. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, be sure to subscribe, hit up that bell icon, come follow me on X, and join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch 2 news, streams, and other content. And special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible. If you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.